Cap and Stem. This is the MycoWizards podcast. On today's show, I've got the mighty mad dog of the Colorado scene, Mr. Michael Nail of Mile High Fungi. Michael and Liz Nail are a badass duo, and they really have this multifaceted and extraordinary talent that's very much needed to get into the bigger mushroom setups. These two, now three with a brand new kid, share the same sentiments as Cap and Stem, really to just help push the industry forward and keep farms growing. So saddle up them shiitake slinging scissors and get to listening while you harvest as Michael and I shoot the shroom for a little bit of MycoWizard ear candy. That was the weirdest fucking intro yet.
Well, you know, being a dad, that's probably the newest thing. That's kind of changed the game. But,
yeah,
no,
I can imagine, man.
Just kind of getting ready for season. Just still kind of in that snowy, muddy season as far as outdoor work.
It's the same thing here.
But yeah, just getting wound up for what I'm hoping to be our best season yet. So,
hell yeah, man. When was your kid born? I feel like I saw an Instagram post and then I didn't see really an update after that.
Yeah, so 3 months ago today. So it's definitely been a interesting transition, but we finally got into the house we've been building for the last 4 years, and it's been it's just in the nick of time, like 3 weeks before the baby came. So
that's how it always goes, man.
Right. Yeah, we're good at hustling at the very end.
Yeah, I think that's most of us, like psycho people who decide to open businesses. Your whole life's a hustle, right? And then you figure that you're just passing that on to your kid.
Totally. What I figure is she's going to end up hating mushrooms and be a corporate banker, but I'm going to try my best to do the opposite.
Yeah, is that your goal? Like to pass the inheritance of mycological nerdiness onto her?
Or just kind of like wild woman stuff. You know, we've got some acreage up in the mountains and just knowing how to be resourceful and, I don't know, not kind of fall into necessary gender norms and just kind of show her, you know, Liz is a badass and knows how to do all the, you know, electrical, plumbing, carpentry stuff that I do. And, you know, she carries a lot of the weight around here as well. So I feel like having that as an example and just kind of showing her all the stuff that maybe I didn't know growing up. I think that's the goal. Mushrooms.
That's great, man. I know. Yeah. I have a lot of friends who are, you know, they're in that age group now where they're starting to like figure out how to raise their kids in those environments. And like the pandemic has pushed it. My friends, Jose and Celine had a kid, her name's Alma, down in Brooklyn. And they came up here like the week before the pandemic was actually a thing. And then they just never left. And their whole life now is just like completely different than living in the city. And they're so stoked on it. And so is she, like the little one, you know. It's just a different way of life when you can get the hell out of an urban setting and learn how to live again, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of wild for us because, you know, we started in the city and as we were expanding, I mean, it's like cannabis had exploded. So if you had a derelict warehouse anywhere in the city, it was being snatched up for millions of dollars. And I was like, well, we're not going to be able to make those dollars make sense. So we're like 45 minutes into the high country west of Denver, but It's nice because you feel like you're at the end of the earth, and you pretty much are, but you can still be to the center of town in under an hour. So it's kind of a sweet spot for us. Any further, we couldn't really make
beautiful area.
The logistics work as far as transport. But 45.
Yeah, because I remember when we were shipping stuff to you, it was like it was a feat to try and get a truck that would even come near you guys, and it was like not happening for a hot second. So
totally
coming up your way.
Yeah, Denver or nothing. You know, anything LTL. They're like, yo, we'll set up a delivery. I'm like, you can't get a tractor and a trailer here for sure. You know, or if you do, you're gonna have a really pissed off driver.
And they take it out on you at the end of the day. You know, they get righteously pissed.
No
Yeah.
doubt.
I
I've
mean,
already
having
said
come from that world too, dude. Yeah, yeah. I feel like was it Neil Brent who posted a photo of like a tractor trailer truck trying to turn around in his spot and getting stuck in a ditch on CMGN.
yeah,
It's
for
like we're
sure.
all in these weird spots. Yeah.
I
We get
prefer to be
lucky. Trucks can't really find us here, but what's that?
I prefer to be in the weird spot.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's worth the hassle at the end of the day for sure.
I mean, you
It
figure out your
definitely
own
is.
logistics. I mean, for us, it's like we built the business, building included ourselves. Same with the house. And so you kind of get aware of how the logistics work. So whenever we get heavy equipment
Yeah.
delivered, it's like there's this one spot you have to turn around in and drop off the machine. And that's the only spot. Because if you come any further, you're going to be cursing me for sure. And,
Yeah, you're totally fucked.
right.
Yeah, man.
It's always entertaining, but in the end of the day, I don't want to deal with that shit.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is like when you live in those rural settings, your day is mostly broken up by people who get fucked or stuck or whatever, and you spend your time like towing them out of a ditch or whatever it is, and while it's fun, while it's happening, it's like, if it's every day, you're just like, be responsible.
In the beginning, that was us, getting towed out of the snowbank in the ditch, just getting our asses handed to us. And now we're like fully equipped, everything's chained up and burly and spares of everything. So, there's an initiation
Yeah, that's what you gotta
process.
do. Yeah, there is, man. And everybody who lives around you, I'm sure, kind of knows it too. And they just sort of wait, Do you have like good or close neighbors, like in relative proximity, or are you guys pretty isolated?
Everybody's got like a decent tract of land, so we don't stare at each other, but we, are on the same private road, and everybody's got some degree of heavy equipment, whether that's like, track hose or mini X's. We've got a little skid steer,
Yeah.
it's like we all could pull ourselves out of a bind if need be. And
Yeah.
occasionally it's the excitement on the road, right? You just kind of like, all right, this asshole's stuck.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
pull it out.
Yeah, that's the fun part about tourists in the wrong area,
Well, we are definitely closed to the public, but every once in a while you'll get some dude looking for boomers like, hey man, I'm in town for the weekend. I'm like, you are in the wrong fucking place, but hey,
Yeah. Yeah, it is Colorado, right? Like it's outlaw territory now with the weed that's gone explosive there. And it's been the only state that's really been able to manage it to a pretty finite degree, it seems.
I mean, we led the way for sure.
perspective.
California had the chance, but
Yeah.
we were able to just kind of swoop in and say, this is how it's done. And, I've got a lot of friends that work in the industry, and basically at this point, as it's blowing up elsewhere, people from Colorado are coming out to these other locales to help start businesses, kind of show people the ropes, all the legal framework, all that stuff. So, it's like, it's a replicable model, that's for sure, like what we've done here. And we've made so much money, I mean, at this point, like, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever. It's like it's generated so much money for school systems and just like the public works. So at this point, like nobody.
It blows my mind to think about. No, certainly not. And it's come so far too, and it's I mean, it still catches me off guard because, even though Maine's like a pretty liberal state when it comes to it, you still have that feeling when you're like driving down the road, you're like, fuck, is there like a roach in my like, ashtray? Or like you see blues and you're like, what's on me? And it gets this weird thing in your head when you grew up with it being such an oppressive, like herb that's around you if you're a, habitual stoner.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the kids here will never know what swag looks like. It's just like an anomaly to them. They're like, there's this stuff that was like compressed with maybe Coca-Cola and filled with seeds. Like, yeah.
Just fucking diesel. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it had PCP in it, man. And well, that's how we did our second drug.
Sometimes unintentionally, right?
Jesus Christ. Yo, most of the time unintentionally until the whole room took a fucking bong hit and you were like, okay, now we're melting into our chairs. Here it goes. So what did you and Liz, did you meet before you started Mile High, or did you guys start it after? Or
I mean, we're like an anomaly. We've been together 17 years. So we met in the Pacific Northwest, and I was studying sustainable agriculture. We got into mushroom foraging. Some of like my best friends went on to run, and still do actually, Stamets Lab at Fungi Perfecti, and run the host defense line, some of that stuff. And so it was just like mushrooms were everywhere. We went to school at the Evergreen State College, which, Michael Bugh used to teach at, and Stamets is an alumni of. And so it was just kind of like in your face. Plus it's just prolific as far as hunting and eating and whatever, right? So we kind of got turned on there. And then I was continuing work with a bunch of different kind of agricultural projects, and then just kind of getting, I don't know, quarter life crisis. And a friend of mine offered me a job down in the islands, and he was like, do you want to be a kayak guide? And I was like, sure. So we just took off for a couple 3 years and just said fuck it and lived down in the Virgin Islands. And
this is you and Liz
and I, the entirety of the journey. And so when we moved back, I started working in the cannabis industry, and then I worked for Denver Urban Gardens, and we were just kind of trying to figure out like what to do as far as a venture. And we're like, we should grow mushrooms.
Was it established that you guys was it established that you guys like wanted to start a business, or were you entrepreneurs from like the get-go, or did it seem sort of foreign to try to do it on your own?
Well, I guess I'm lapsing a little bit. When we first came back, we had some extra seed cash, and it was right before the housing market exploded in Denver. We bought an old Victorian and spent a year and a half completely rebuilding it. We ripped off an old addition, added a 1,200 square foot addition, took everything down to the studs, rewired everything, plumbing, just like brand new pretty much in the end, with like an old 1890s shell. And we're like, this is too much house. We'll never fill this house. We should sell this. And the market was booming, and then so we sold it, and then we had some seed capital to like start something. And Liz was like, let's grow mushrooms. I was like, I don't know how to grow mushrooms. She's like, we can figure it out. I was like, I think we can too. And here we are, 7 years later in the journey. And
wait, back up. What do you, so she just said, do you think we should grow some mushrooms? That's the whole start of it. How did she, what was the beginning of that?
Well, it's funny because when we were in college, we maybe peddled a little bit in illicit herbs and mushrooms. And,
sure.
And she said, wouldn't it be funny if we legitimately grew legal herbs and legal mushrooms? It would be super ironic, wouldn't it? And I was like, yeah, and I looked into like the basil market, and I was like, I don't think there's room for me to jump in on that. I looked in the mushroom market. I was like, there's nobody doing that here. Like literally nobody doing that here.
Right.
We're like, well, we're like builders more than anything. Like I went to school for agriculture.
Yeah.
Like I believe in sustainable agriculture, and it's definitely where a huge part of my passion lies. But like I like systems and building shit, and mushrooms were like a perfect melding of those things, because it kind of forces you to be good at least a little bit of everything, or you won't make it. And So
You certainly won't, man. I mean, or you will now. It's kind of up in the air. You can buy everything in now and start a mushroom farm out of nothing. You know, it's very
it is
weird
true. I mean,
now.
right now, actually during the off season, I mean, we shut down seasonally. Because we
Yeah.
never really made the dollars make sense in the wintertime. But like I'm
Yeah.
outfitting a shipping container for a ranch up in the higher country than us. That's just like a plug and play thing, like
Yep.
top of line sensors, built-in radiant floors, like super nice, kitted out. And like they full blown said, we don't ever want to do the back end. We just want to bring in blocks. We just you actually sold some to those guys recently. I told them to order from you guys kind of while we were tinkering around with some stuff. And
Who's this?
Sandy with Nap Ranch, Sandy Story. She worked mainly with
Oh,
Kelsey.
cool. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
I was just kind of pointing her, and they have got like a booming microgreens business, and for us, it was just kind of a cool way for us to do something in the off season, continue to tinker around. That way I can be close to the babe and everything, and not be in full blown mushroom grind. From the very beginning, we said, the one thing I like about agriculture is there is a winter, and you fix everything that broke and all that, and sleep a little bit.
Tiny bit. Yeah. Go to a movie or maybe not anymore.
Yeah. Right. Something besides trim 1,000 shiitakes and pressure wash rooms and the whole grind. And everyone's like, you could go year round. And I was like, yeah, I fucking know. And I'm not. I'm just not, and we just hustle super hard.
That's good. It's smart.
Yeah. I mean, it works for us.
It's so smart to figure that out, man. Well, I think it works for I can think of a handful of farms when we first started supplying farms with just substrate who were only seasonal, and they were mostly in warmer climates. And I think you guys were the first ones that I noted that were in a cooler climate, and it just made sense for you to not have to hustle through it. So it's an interesting thing to have been from that block supplier side and see the variations and the ideals that farms go through to justify not being a workaholic or not working themselves so far into the fucking ground that they don't want to keep going, because eventually everybody hits that fucking wall, right? So if you know it's coming, you can be like, nah. Yeah.
I mean, we're maniacs anyway. We're gluttons for punishment. We still build in the winter. We still do all sorts of shit. And where we live, sometimes we'll get a 4-foot dump, right? The idea of moving the skidder in with a bunch of sawdust to try to mix it. It was that sounds like a nightmare. Plus, for us, we've really targeted CSA models. We've targeted, farmers markets. We do work with some restaurants, and it was kind of a blessing actually when the pandemic hit, because we had all this stuff that was slotted for restaurant production, and it pretty much evaporated overnight. And then I started crunching the numbers, and I was like, I offer pretty generous terms with established clients, net 30, I got net 15 for everybody new. But then you're working with these restaurants, and sometimes it's 45 days later, I haven't gotten paid yet. And so instead of having 30 or 40 grand large out, we're we should just refocus that energy and beef up these models that are working right now. And if restaurants do want to buy mushrooms from us, it's COD and, maybe $4 off retail price. That's it. That we're not doing anything extra for you. We appreciate the work you do, but I felt in the beginning, I don't know if it was status or feeling I had to do it a certain way, but I was we need to target the restaurants. There's this booming restaurant scene in Denver. We should be totally doing this. And then I realized we were working for pennies, and I was this is dumb. Can we do this better? So the pandemic actually helped us tighten the belt a little bit and go, this is not the way forward, at least the way we were doing it. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, that's an interesting timeline, man. it's like every farm kind of figures out that they have to diversify their, supply chain, but also their selling markets too. Because I don't know how many farms have gone through that where they realize the simple fact that restaurants in general only make money when they sell and they're no longer the owners of the restaurant. You don't make massive cash unless you're some like fantastically like well supported and famous restaurant, so the cash is always tight, and that's where it's cutthroat. You just get paid or get fucked.
Well, and the thing is, we wanted to be like semi-competitive with Pennsylvania and California, and with DIA being here, people can get stuff shipped in, and it was like, so trying to keep up with the Joneses, but like, obviously our cost of production is totally different. And so it took us a while to realize that, and just say, hey, if you want our stuff, it costs X. I'm not really budging on anything. We'd love to work with you, but it's okay if we don't. And just kind of like a liberating feeling in the end, just because everything else has, partially because of the pandemic, but also just because year after year, I feel like we do a better job for the CSAs and the other markets that we do. And so we grow every year in those venues. And so it was just kind of being usurped from the restaurant kind of black hole that happened early on. And I was like, we shouldn't go back the other way.
Yeah. No, it's smart, dude, because it really is a black hole, like at the end of the day, especially if you see it coming, and you test your like patience for relationships too, in terms of like, you got to get paid to pay the bills to keep growing,
Well,
and that's
the worst
the hardest
part
part about scaling up.
The restaurants sold the mushrooms 2 days after you gave it to them, but I have to wait 40 days to get paid. I'm like, there's no interaction I want to be a part of that works like that. Right.
Yeah.
Unless I'm making a huge big.
Yeah. We struck the ground with like the block thing, and it's a hard thing to explain to new people coming into it. But, we've had so many farms that have just, this weird, like mycological, I'm going to start a mushroom farm, boom, just occurred, and it just keeps growing. And most farms are understanding of it now, but we still have the outliers. It's like, look, it's pretty much COD. We're doing half of the production for you. We have to buy in all the raw materials. We have to hire all the labor, do all the production, get the spawn, everything. And then it gets to you, and then you have to do the other side, So it's looking at the industry when it's split up like that, and as soon as you have it under one roof, you realize that it's threefold now. Especially if you're doing spawn, you're doing block production and fruiting, you have that much more overhead to really manage and understand the breakdown of, and that's the biggest like pressure point when it comes to trying to figure out how to keep your business afloat, cash flow wise.
Oh, 100%. Now we're finally at the point where we're actually doing everything start to finish ourselves again. We're still supplementing here and there. I bring in spawn from you guys sometimes, or TR.
Yeah.
But at this point, with the autoclave running, we're back to the store model, but like at our larger scale at this point. And, it's definitely a lot, but 7 years later, I feel like we have the numbers. We know what the actual cash flow needs to be. We know how far in the hole we can go in the beginning of the season. And, especially with targeting the CSA models and like true CSAs where they pay in June, we start ramping up March and April. And then basically into May, beginning of June, we're in the hole. But then, let's just say 30% of the revenue we're going to generate for the year, maybe a little bit more, comes in all at once. And that's huge. I mean, we looked into farm service agency loans and term operating loans, that kind of stuff. And, there are decent rates, but it was like just figuring out how much money you needed to get going every year, especially since we put the brakes on in the winter, right? So there's no like carryover. It's just like a dead stop to, just a dead start, right?
Yeah, to a hard start again, right?
Yeah. But
that's a fucking scary thing, man. But it seems like it's working, and that's sort of that model that I'm intrigued by, because I don't think a lot of people are, you either do it by default or you realize that if you stop, you're kind of done. It's like the adage of, you know, if you don't go to college right out of high school, you're never going to go, sort of thing. And it's a total, like, you know, misfire of a fact. And it's not really a fact at that level. You realize that you can stop and you can start. And it probably gives you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a complete like handle on the situation to know what it is to keep going and what it is to stop, what it is to restart.
Oh yeah, I mean, atrophy is a bitch, no doubt. I mean, but like I said, we never really stop. We just stop production, right? You know, it's just like, what are we doing next season? You know, going through all the taxes, all the spreadsheets, all the numbers, making sure that we're like staying lean. And then just like with that pause, you know, I love like the European model where people like have like a month or plus to just take off and be with their family and go for walks and think, because you can't think when you're going a billion miles a minute. You know, you just do what's in front of you, which might lead you off a cliff. And so having that pause, that reflection point is like super important for our business, mental health, everything. You know, and like I'm sure it's a little bit different with you guys in the sense that, you know, you have a little bit bigger staff, you might be able to pull away for the weekends and that kind of thing. And if you can build that into your model, great, you know. But if it's just a 2-man, 3-man op, it's definitely super important to build that space for yourself.
Yeah, it really is, man. And it turns into this survival thing, because I've definitely seen the burnouts. And like Eric Milligan was one of them. He hadn't taken a vacation until this year, and he took like a month and a half off. And I think still he got super stir crazy and ended up like getting back into it more early. But I was stoked, man. When he came to record that podcast this winter, he just was like, he's like, I gotta make a decision, and I just have to decide to like hold back for a while. And this is like in the, you know, in the darker days of the beginning of the pandemic, and he did it. And I think it did him a world of wonder, because it allows you to reanalyze. And I remember, I feel like it was a conversation I had with TR in like the early Joey Schlegel CMGN days, or maybe it was a post that he made, but he references like, you can't create the momentum of a business if you're worried about everything being perfect. You just have to create a fucking shitstorm and just go and ignore the small stuff that's like the little piles that are going to be around and the little construction material, you know, areas. And then eventually you catch up with it. And I think that works for a while. And then all of a sudden you realize at a bigger scale, you have to have people to worry about those little piles that get too big, you know, and the stupid construction debris or the OSHA issues or whatever it is. And then it's a beast, and you can't ever shut the fucker off, you know?
Sure.
It gets scary.
No, I can imagine. I mean, for us, because, you know, we built the boiler room ourselves, we did all this stuff. It was like, there's all this time, and we did that in the winter. Pretty much every year, that's like when we would tackle like the next big thing. Like this year, it's air handling. You know, we're putting in some 2 massive swamp cooler systems and big louvered vents, and just because, you know, I guess it's true in all things mushroom related, is once you have a few successes, then you realize that this has created its own problem. You know, and incubating thousands of blocks in the barn in the summer. Before, when we weren't incubating, really, heat wasn't such an issue, right? And then you have all these blocks, and then you got the boiler running and all this, and it's like, we need an air handling system. Like, what are we thinking? You know, maybe we should have done that first, but whatever. You know, you figure it out, you live and you learn, and
that's true.
We're getting all these projects done, and we lived in the barn that we've been growing the mushrooms in. I mean, we cohabitated with them for like 2.5 years. And so,
so you are generally insane.
Yeah, no, for sure. To leave that relationship is liberating, right? Because
I bet
I now live 100 yards away, and I can go visit the mushrooms, and it's a little bit different than having fucking roommates.
It's very true. Yeah. Especially when the roommates create too much CO2, and then you're
Right.
just all spaced out all the fucking time. Yeah, no, it's huge, man. It's, being too surrounded like that, it breaks your brain after a while, which is like why there's a motorcycle shop at our farm. It's why there's people coming in doing different things even through the pandemic, just to create some like break in the redundant production scale sort of style of this, an approach to this thing. And it makes for a little bit more of an easygoing crew, staff, and then business model in general, so we're not all burnt out. But yeah, it's a challenge no matter what. So you were living at the farm, but what's the beginning of this? What was the first thing that you guys, invested in? How did you get rolling and sort of create your idealistic version of this is working. We can actually do this.
Well, so we started out of our house, also like maniacs. I like cut a bunch of holes in the floor, put floor drains in, turned random rooms into fruiting chambers, like just got buck wild with it. And then it like squeezed us pretty much out of the house. And then I was like, I'd seen the shipping container model, just like those old how to grow mushroom videos, and you've seen these different people that are using shipping containers, and it was like, all right, well, we can get some shipping containers. We'll plop them in the backyard. And we were like the house right next to Sports Authority Field where the Broncos play. So we were pretty prominent in Denver. And I'd called to see if I could get like a permit to do it. And they said, it's kind of a gray area. We don't really have a way to legally permit them. We know they're all over the city. Basically you'll find out if you have a shitty neighbor. So we plopped these containers in the backyard, ripped down the fence, and like a week and a half went by, nothing. I'm like, all right, I'm feeling pretty good about this. 2 weeks later, a cease and desist from the city. I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. So I kind of did a little snooping around, figured out who it was. I was like, okay, well, what do we do next? And basically I realized that there's this very bureaucratic Board of Appeals process that we could go through. So I guess it's Board of Adjustments, I believe. And what should have been like a 2-week grace period, we turned into 2.5 years of keeping them in the backyard, going to these hearings, showing them we were making progress. We bought, and it forced our hand to buy the land that we're currently at. But it gave me a chance to outfit them, get things rolling, get production up a little bit. And then that's kind of where we first met you guys. You guys were moving facilities and you're like offloading a bunch of shiitake super cheap. And we grabbed some of them and they performed well. And I had most of the rest of my stuff for the season. We were getting close to the end of our season, all lined out. And I took one vacation, major faux pas in the mushroom world, take a vacation during season. And the guy that was tending them, our first employee, the humidistat goes out, right? So it's just constantly humidifying. The mushrooms are sopping wet. And then he ran out of boxes to put the mushrooms in. And so he went to the Home Depot and was literally putting like 20 pounds of wet oysters into Home Depot boxes, like moving boxes, right? As I came back from vacation with just like this like wet mushroom trash. And I was like, holy shit. And so and he had let a bunch of other stuff just go sideways. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. So I
feel like there's a lot of farms that have the same exact story.
I was like, do you guys have extra blocks? And he's like, yeah, we got extra blocks. So that's when I first brought in kind of like a diverse mix from you guys. And then as we built out the barn up here, so as we were approaching our deadline with the city to move the containers, we had bought this land. We had figured out like we're going to put up a steel building, designed it, all that. And then that winter we built the building and the fruiting rooms. and
Yeah.
then moved the shipping containers up here. And then basically for those first 2 years, we were bringing in stuff from you guys and a little bit of production on our own, but mainly just like filling the fruiting rooms. We built this big facility without adequate
Yeah.
sterilization equipment, incubation space built out, or any of that stuff. It was just like maximize these rooms' output. And, we did that for a number of years. And, it was the train wheels we really needed. There was no way we were going to get the autoclave online ourselves. There was no way we were going to keep on tinkering around on the property if we were doing all of those levels of production at that time. And so it's been kind of nice now where I'm like finally at the point where it's like everything's working. I'm basically fine tuning little things, adding in a little extra here and there. And I've kind of had like a mushroom emotional renaissance in the sense that I'm feeling it all over again. I'm like listening to your podcast. I'm listening to the Mushroom Hour. I'm just listening to like, random tidbits. I'm like excited again, which is kind of nice. I think it's because I don't live here anymore. So
dude, I mean, that's you really need that to sort of make it through a day sometimes, especially when you've been in it for a while. And I think that was why I wanted to start this podcast. And a few people suggested it to me, and I was like, man, this is going to be the only thing that's going to keep me sane. So sure. Cause I'm sure a lot of people have the story, but I was planning to just travel and visit farms right before the pandemic happened. And it was just like, that's the goal. We're just going to go see what everybody's up to, see what they need, see what they're interested in, and sort of spend the year cultivating the next move. And it just didn't happen that way. So this thing, it's allowed me to actually, like, every time I record one of these, I'm like, oh man, all right. So like everybody's still sort of into this, and I'll get an email. Like I got an email from a dude today who was like, oh man, the buzz on the shroomery about your podcast is far out. And I was like, Jesus, really? Like, I mean, I'm not going on the shroomery to see what people are talking about. And he was like, yeah, it got shut down. You should join our Discord and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, everybody is filtering into these weird little enclaves of a digital sphere of how to communicate, how to keep in touch, how to keep innovating, keep growing. And the shroom thing just keeps going. It's unreal. It's fascinating. So it keeps me pumped if I think about it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think it was nearly impossible for any of us to foresee the increase in popularity, just general information, just emerged kind of all at once. It's like one of our clients, a super good friend, him and his dad and Gary Linkoff all started the Telluride Mushroom Festival now, some 40 some odd years ago. And they become close friends, just talking with him. And he's just like, we were just straight outcasts. Like nobody, like you talking about mushroom, people are like, you're fucking weird, Where now I get people at the farmers market talking, more shit than I know about the beta glucans and whatnot. I'm like, oh shit, okay, yeah. You sound like you know what you're talking about. Take a note,
It turns around, man, and then you realize like you're actually learning from some of the people, and you're like, holy shit, it's amazing. I've told the story a million times, but we had this like 11-year-old girl and her dad come in, and I like looked up at her dad, and I basically said, can I help you? And he just sort of looked down at his daughter, who's like fucking 3 foot and whatever. And she just goes, yeah, I just need some oyster spawn to inoculate my straw substrate. And I was just like, what in the fuck? I was like blown away, like not only with the, like just the general verbiage, but just this like little kid is just jamming on the dream and trying to grow stuff. That's so far out for like my perception of a kid getting into this stuff. And I'm sure like you having a daughter now, like you think about this stuff, like it's going to matter more and more as time goes on, that people do stick to these patterns and paths and learn to sort of work within these, nice mellow systems of food production,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's truly amazing. And at this point, we've kind of developed some nice lines with folks where it's like we actually are back to working with some woodworkers and arborists, and there's like a new group of folks that do like urban harvesting that are collecting sawdust for us and stuff, and then they're aware of it because they're tossing it or whatever, throwing it in a pile in the backyard, letting it become soil. But being able to grab at least one food crop rotation through it. We're actually playing around with doing some agaricus this year, just with some of our compost, because we've never sold the compost, and we've got more agricultural endeavors beyond the mushrooms. We got 100 cider apple trees. We grow a bunch of potatoes and garlic. I'm putting in a couple hundred raspberry plants this year. We got grant funding to put in a big high tunnel greenhouse through the EQIP program, the USDA NRCS program. And so selling the compost seems short-sighted to me always because it's so awesome, and we put a bunch of red wigglers in the pile, early on.
Yeah.
And, come springtime, you just take a shovel full and there's hundreds in there. And for where we're at, bringing up material is just so cost prohibitive. So we've always just done it, and we're like, well, why not try to do a secondary crop out of it? And I know a couple people doing it.
Yeah.
Hazeldale up above us, up in Fort Collins, they do it. And
they're still kicking, huh?
In CMGN that do it, but it seems like it's something that people have done at exotic farms where they just do like a secondary run on the agaricus. So why not?
Yeah, I think it's harder and harder to find that like compost, and it's harder and harder to set up the things that you don't really know much about that are the industry norm. People just like generally don't care about agaricus, which is interesting. But I think that's because of the diversity of other species that all cultivate in the same manner. And then you take the shit mushrooms and it's, just such a few variety and a similar taste that people are like, meh. But once you've been doing the gourmet thing a while, it's like, why not? It's cool.
Well, for sure. I mean, we get lots of people that ask us about it too. I mean, they would buy the shiitake and the buttons if we had them, and so, plus, it's just something I haven't done, right? It's always nice to tinker. It's kind of funny. I've toured like Ostrom's out in Lacey, Washington. I think they do 250,000 pounds a week of just the whites, right? And like looking at a facility like that, and they're all phasing set up and just like what it takes to run on that scale. And they're getting $1.25 a pound wholesale, at least when I was out there. And you're like,
that's unreal.
For what the size of that facility is, like refrigerated trucks in and out pretty much day and night, and you're like $1.25. Hot damn! So I'm not trying to compete.
But you realize like you have to be at that scale. No. Boy, that'd be a fool's errand, man.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, this is the fastest way to lose money around. But for us,
it's a very popular way to lose money.
Right? Totally. And, so just playing around with new stuff. I'm going to do some outdoor beds with some wine caps and just, I don't know, just play around. Like I said, getting excited all over again. And now we finally got a lot of the production side, at least semi-dialed in. I'm currently knocking on wood. But I've got like a good routine, pretty happy with the flow of the space. And, just kind of stoked to see what the next year or two brings. Yeah,
man. I mean, you guys have gotten to that scale where I think it becomes predominantly exciting because you have the flow and the mechanisms down, and you've got how big is your retort now? How many blocks can you jam out in one of those?
So I do 250 10-pounders a run.
Yep.
And that seems to be kind of like the sweet spot. I could probably cram a little bit more, but I've kind of opted on the non-cramming end of things. And that whole process was sweet. Like the retort's from 1956. It's number like 430 of all pressure vessels registered with the national board. So it was like bringing back to life a relic. And got real beefy 18 horse right boiler that's kind of paired with it, and got a little extra accoutrement that probably is overkill, but it was fun putting together. And just like welding the carts back together, putting on brand new casters. I mean, when we bought it, the carts had like square casters, like it had just been like rusted out and just they were done.
Just beat to a pulp. Yeah, man.
And just like seeing it alive and running and cranking, and just like it feels good. Because it sat outside for a couple years after we bought it. We were just like, okay, we know this is the next step, but how the fuck do we do it? And when we were digging the foundation for the house, I had a 52,000 pound track hoe up at the house, and I was like, this is the time. We're gonna swing that bitch into the barn. And it was like a 9,000 pound wrecking ball, right? I was like within inches of each side of the garage bay, like, I hope I don't take this bitch out. But when we got it in, Liz is in the skid steer inside the barn, pulling it into place. I'm kind of flicking the bucket, getting it in. And then, after that, it still took us like another year to figure out like all the state boiler requirements and like what they were going to want to see. Cause we did everything permitted, and it just took a while just to cross the T's and dot the I's and get the capital to do it. All that fun stuff.
It does, man. And you want to be safe about it too. And I think that's often overlooked. There's so many like clandestine mycologists in this weird small and big world, and they just don't give a fuck. But you want to be smart. You don't want to kill a whole town. So
well, and since I've been in the game, I've seen a number of them at least burn partially to the ground, if not all the way to the ground. So it's important that you know your shit. Take your time. This is a public service announcement. Take your time. Watching one video on YouTube does not make you an expert. But
no, dude, and everybody learns that way.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. Use YouTube, but just watch more than one video.
Right. Watch like 10 and then build your whole farm. Yeah.
Right. Well, for us, what I was stoked on, and which has worked out pretty good for us, is, for us, atmospheric sterilization wasn't going to work because we're at 8,200 feet. Water boils at like 196 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we knew we were going to have to do some sort of larger pressure vessel. And what we opted to do too was a low pressure system on the boiler, which I couldn't be like happier with. Just I've known people that have had issues with regulators, going from high pressure to their vessels and stuff. And the boiler itself operates as the regulator, right? So when it hits 15, it basically kicks off, 14.5 kicks on, just kind of hits that sweet spot of just kind of coasting there. And
that's great.
In the state of Colorado, you don't need a boiler operator's license if you're using a low pressure system.
Yep.
So that was kind of like the beauty. We still have to get the firebox inspected once a year, but the rest of the county requirements, all that stuff's just one and done. So it just kind of feels good to
as you should, man. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's like the Sioux that we have too. That thing, it like blew out the back of the actual thing, and it just, whatever was the fire retardant against the back thing there, just like slowly leaked away from like a slow drip, I guess, from one of the fire tubes. And you don't know. And like, if we didn't catch that and like see it and like see it acting weird, that's a fucking meltdown. It would have been terrible. So getting that stuff inspected is huge, man.
I'm like, I can identify with some of the libertarian ideals, but at the same time, like, there are some rules in place, so fucktards can't be total fucktards.
Yeah, and they will too if they get the chance. So.
Right. Yeah. No. So, it's been just like such a awesome journey. I want to give major shout outs to you, Mark, and just like other folks that have kind of helped guide the way. In the CMGN, I think I'm more of a sideliner, but we've had a lot of those guys that are traveling through Denver up, and just kind of, I'm more of like a one-on-one guy in the end, where I'm not like a pissing contest internet dude. It's just not really a great allocation of my time.
I'll get on there if something's like, I'll get on there if something's like super funny or something, but I can't the fights and like all of the aggravation. I mean, you just have to go on Mushroom Growing on Facebook, that giant 190 odd thousand people group, and just see people fucking losing it at one another. And you're like, there goes my morning. I'm just going to turn my phone off now and call it a day. Like, Jesus. But yeah, people love to fight, man. It's just
the internet is a hostile place, right? You know, you can, that's why it's just like, you know, I can sideline it, you know, and then jump in occasionally or private message somebody. I'd much rather do that than just get into this fucking pissing contest. Especially, you know, the mushroom industry is so male dominated. It's just a bunch of egos just clashing sometimes. And you're like, this is the only way. Well, it's not the only way. Well, it is the only fucking way, you know? It's just exhausting.
Yeah, how does that speak to like Liz being in it? How does she feel her role is in the whole mushroom gamut? Does she not give a shit, or does she just like straight up just wants to grow stuff and keep building stuff and doing what you guys are doing?
I would say more of that latter, you know. I mean, she adds like the artistic touch, you know, the barn is beautiful, you know, we've got like custom wood cladding around the retort door. We've got, you know, like it's not real.
I saw that.
Copper paneling in there. It's like all the lighting is legit. Like it's definitely a woman's touch, right? You know, it's you leave a dude in there, it's just OSB, maybe painted, maybe not. Some poly dropped with some duct tape.
Probably not. Yeah. Oh yeah, our bathroom is you just go shit in that bucket over there and then throw it out back. So have that, bud. Yeah. No, it's true. The smartest thing we ever did was like hire more women around Cap and STEM, because we were just getting out of hand. Like it was getting to be like a fucking jailhouse in here. It was crazy. No offense to any of my employees. They're great, but you need that balance, you know? Like if you don't balance out the sexes, you have just utter chaos, and like it's not good.
Like, it's like going to a freight terminal. You know, it's the civilian jail-esque vibe that happens because it's just dudes for days, right? Nobody's cleaned that toilet.
It's bad news,
months, right? Don't touch anything. And you get
exactly.
them in there, it's just like, come on, guys, like get it together, right? And we respond well to that in the end. You know, it's like some dude tells you to go clean the toilet. You're like, you want to fight? Somebody's like, all right, it's disgusting in there.
Yeah, fine. That's true. Yeah. No, that's the way it should be, man. I don't know. It's a fine line for some people and it's a balance for others, but you know, like that's where Frankie, my late wife there, was so like integral into like pushing into those female worlds that were so male dominated industry wise when it was motorcycle worlds or mushroom worlds or whatever. And it's fun, I think, on some level for women to be in those environments because they're stressing that like the norm has to change and you don't have to be just some curmudgeon fucking asshole dude. You can be respectful and you can be something other than just the stereotypical farmer dude or mechanic dude or dude who can't clean a fucking bathroom dude.
Oh yeah. I mean, and like Liz turns heads, you know, I mean, she's the first one in the Bobcat. She, you know, she's proficient with every set of tools we got. She does all of that, but then, you know, at the farmer's market, she's like the bubbly, loving presence, and I'm like in the back slinging mushrooms all day. Like, you want to talk to me? Come to the side. Let's do this, you know? And it's definitely a nice balance. I mean, we've worked together the vast majority of those 17 years, right? Whether it was in, you know, home construction or we were both, you know, working in ecotourism together. We've just done so much. The two of us were very well balanced as far as, you know, we know the next step. We're very intuitive of like, oh, you need to do that. You need to do that. We don't even have to talk about it. And with a business partner, you kind of need somebody to know the next step while you're working on something, you know. And that's always been my hardest part with employees is the patience level of somebody who hasn't worked with me for so long, who doesn't know exactly how to handle the next thing. And then I'm going to have to stop and explain and go through that. And so, you know, it's going to be interesting just because I'm losing some degree of my partner in the business as she's transitioning into kind of more mom, roles for our household. But, she's still just super integral into it, and just making sure I'm checking my emails and making sure stuff's ordered and all that. It's definitely a multi-person task, and she's definitely still in it. But yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't have it.
Yeah, but it's got to be slightly scary, right? It's got to be like, shit, it is a huge life change, not only to have a kid, but to have those parental sort of roles, like all of a sudden there, like at a turn of a dime. You have to figure out how to balance that life out. And that can be to the detriment of a lot of people. But I feel like if you've had that basis for like a really solid relationship, then you're good. You'll figure it out,
Well, and for us, we talked about this a lot leading up into this season, and I dropped my Saturday farmers market that I've been doing for the last 5 years. And there's like a multitude of reasons. It did not perform very well during the pandemic, where everything else was up quite a bit. And it was just, we worked Saturday and Sunday at the markets, and then Monday through Friday at the farm. And, there's a period of time, usually 6 to 8 months, where it's 7 days a week nonstop. Mornings start at 4 or 5 for me, and they go till dinner. And then sometimes I'm still tinkering with shit after dinner. And I was like, this is not sustainable. And so we dropped that Saturday market this year, just so no matter what, we're going for a hike. We're doing family stuff, because if not, it's really easy just to get wrapped up in the center of the cyclone and you just keep cruising.
Yeah.
And so I feel really good about that.
This industry, I was just going to say, this industry attracts that personality, and that's a huge step, man. So kudos to you for actually like recognizing that you actually have to fucking change for the better of your brain and body and human as a family, like that's huge. That's very hard. I don't know that I could do it, like I haven't been faced with it yet, but it's like I had to do it, when Frankie got sick, but to a lesser degree, because I'm still like this obsessive figure. And like you're saying, if you have a business partner versus a life partner who is your business partner, the conversations are that much more like you have to work to keep them in line with one another. And if they get out of line, you're like, oh, fuck, we're not seeing shit eye to eye. This is not good, And then you decide to take on the roles that make the most sense for your business, but it doesn't always make the most sense for your lifestyle, it's a fucking tough one to figure out, without a doubt. No matter how small you are, you're still going to work 7 days a week,
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there is some degree of that, somebody's got to pick the mushrooms, right? You pick the mushrooms every morning.
Right.
But I think the thing that I've kind of appreciated about listening to some of your podcasts, actually, and some other stuff I was taking, is there was a period of time where I was like, try to dominate the market, right? At least try to get a foot into all the good spaces within the city. And then if other market or other competition emerged, then they could create their own venues or help to develop other stuff, but like they weren't going to take any of mine. And I think I've chilled out a little bit, where I'm like, it's okay, there's going to be more competition. When we started, there was nobody in Denver doing what we're doing now. There's easily 5 or 6 outfits of some size doing stuff from basement level stuff to people that have small spaces and whatnot. And, I've started to look at it. It's like, well, now we've got the biggest sterilizing system in the city. It's like, well, why don't I just befriend these people and say, hey, you're shy on blocks this week, whatever, like, let's do it more like that than this kind of dog eat dog thing, because that's exhausting and it'll give you anxiety.
Dude, that's exactly how we got started. Like if it wasn't for Mousum, us, Northspore, all coming up at the same time, with Eric from New Hampshire thrown in the mix and this farm that closed, Bountiful, we wouldn't have, it would have been real weird real fast. And that's just because not one of us just dominated the scene first. It was just like, fuck, we all had our weird specialties. So we really had to figure out a way to maneuver around that and not just like force one another out. And I think when you can come to that realization, especially in this industry, you realize that there's a beauty in that, unlike most other industries where you are fighting to like keep it. But, you know, at the end of the day, this is still food, and there's like a million fucking small farms just growing weird crops, you know, and if you look at it like that, they're not competing with one another. There's still like 18 vendors selling fucking carrots and cabbage and broccoli at a farmer's market, and they all make it just fine, you know?
Just fine being relative.
They live to farm another day.
Exactly. Or another season, you know, I mean, they say it for a reason. And no, I mean, it's just one of those things where that decentralization and that just like, and that losing of ultra competitive nature, because, you know, that whole capitalism, grow or die, that's what put us into this terrible periled landscape, you know, both on a societal level and on an environmental level. And it's like, can you find a sweet spot and chill, or at least find a sweet spot and then work from there, instead of just juggernauting your way to the top. And you know, I think it maybe came with a little bit of age and a little bit of just like, you know, getting riled up and seeing emerging what I've viewed to be competitors for a period of time and going, this is not the way forward, right? Like, do not waste your time. Like, these are all people that are just like you, that were interested for the same fucking reasons you were, that get bit by the bug. And there's no reason to waste your time in that like aggro state. There's definitely a better solution somewhere else. And that's, I really think at this point with the business, it's like, do what you do already well, you know, honor all your partnerships, your relationships, you know, do the best you can within all that sphere. And then at this point, kind of work for more kind of like allied relationships.
Yeah, it's a very tricky dichotomy too when you're forced to sort of entertain both crowds. And the mushroom world does have both scenes too, just like the biker world, just like farming world, any of that, these hyper conservative or hyper liberal. And I mark it down to like the two quotes that have been like in my head for the past year. And it's there's just like a Sage Francis line that's he's like this great white rapper from Providence, Rhode Island, but it's just, I think he says something along, this is just survival for fun, coupled and drastically compared to like the crazy Mattis quote that was surfing around like during Trump land era, that was have a plan to kill everybody you meet. You have those two things and they sort of slam up against one another, and you can choose a fucking side, and you can make a realization and a determination by who you're around, how you react to them. And if your heart basically just says, no, man, this is survival for fun. Like, we're a fucking lucky bunch of fucking organisms. Might as well like make the best of it. Why do you need a plan to kill everybody you meet? You know, that's not the way forward at all. And that's not like going down some socialistic, communistic realm at all, even though those might not be a bad concept. They're just, it's not even that. It's just be respectful and help one another grow. Because at the end of the day, food and hunger rule everything. Nothing else really matters, you know?
100%, you know? I mean, we're riding the crest of the wave, right? So it's an interesting event, interesting time to be alive. And
it is
not worthwhile spending your time focusing on the negativity or what doesn't bring you joy, right? Like, if it doesn't bring you joy, let it go. Find something else, right? It's too short.
Fuck yeah.
And so
church,
we're trying to embody. And you know, like I said, it's been super interesting for us too in the mushroom world, just connecting with more folks, like-minded folks, people that are doing the stuff. And I think the tinkerer builder type is the people that really kind of thrive in this world. And that's why I love it again, right? And just some of the people I've met through there where it's just like people are doing some random shit. Like Josh Saul, he came up.
Oh, yeah.
And he had met some dude that took like a treadmill and welded up some barrels for him and made his tumbler. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Like this is legit, right? You know, like I don't care if you're doing anything but just like throwing a rock down that thing. It's still cool for cool sake. And if it can make your car more efficient,
man,
like, all the better, right?
Yeah. Oh, Josh is an innovative dude, man. He's somebody I need to talk to on this podcast. You know, he's come up pretty fast, and he's got this very mellow, consistent personality in the sort of adversity of how quick this game changes. So he's well suited for it, and he seems to like grasp everything he's doing, and he's just jamming on it hard. So I'm stoked that he's sort of in this world, and when you find people who come into this thing and you're just like, they're there and you're excited that they're there, you know, you're going on the right path, and you know, you're with your people, you know, and that's the same thing. It's you find these people and they just excite you to keep going. And that's the name of the game. That's the only thing that keeps me in it, I swear.
It's the Vonnegut crevasse, right? You know, you have that crevasse,
yes,
right? That just brings it together, right? And somehow us weird myco nerds have found one another in this bizarre digital sphere, and can have that camaraderie. And I mean, it's helpful. I mean, sometimes I don't understand how these guys are getting any work done, because I look at the threads and I'm like, this is hours of your time, hours, right? Like, I don't have hours to spare, but damn. You know, but
somebody makes a post and I'll like quickly look at it and then make the judgment call. I'm like, nah, I can't look at it right now. It's just not necessary. But I remember when Bradford was like that, you know, Brad was on there fucking slaying like literature length Bibles of math equations to dilute different versions of, you know, how much airflow needs to go into certain rooms in order to achieve X, Y, and Z. And like, he would just list it all out, and people are like, yeah, my brain's not that big. Sorry, Brad. I don't know what to do with that, you know? And I think he peeled back from it, but he was so like, he was cued the fuck into that CMGN world for a long time. And I would pretty much only read his comments and be like, oh yeah, all right.
Yeah, he was like our science robot for a minute, you know, like somebody would post something and it's like, boom, the actual stats broken down. Yep. You're like, all right.
Yes. Thank you, Brad. Yeah, man. No, I definitely feel the tinker thing. It's definitely, it's fun to innovate. And, you know, like all these mechanisms and machinery are out there now, and you can go on Alibaba or find any of these crazy bagging or debagging or harvesting or whatever machines. And yeah, they don't cost a fortune past a certain scale, but it's fun to innovate, and it's fun to sort of push your bounds and be able to make these things without a $50,000 piece of equipment. You know, it's like, how can you turn a treadmill or a culvert or, you know, some cheap fucking random timing belts into something, you know, and that's very exciting, because then that whole thing is the crux of what just made your whole system faster. You know, like most people who reach out and they're like, I need to figure out how to build a tumbler. I'm like, well, you need to remember that a tumbler for your substrate is merely a placeholder. You still have to shake the fucker if you're making a 10-pound bag, but you still, like, you can make it out of whatever the hell you want, you know, just find a way to make it work.
No, and I love that. Like when we lived down in the islands, I had a Jamaican mechanic that kind of taught me everything I know about automotive stuff. And, you know, he grew up outside of Kingston, and he, you know, he would go into the junkyard and pull stuff from cars that they didn't talk to each other, but he could make them talk to each other, right? Or like, you know, he always loved the Toyota parts because the Toyota parts were metal, right? So he'd just be out there grinding a pulley down or something like that, right? And
yeah,
I loved that, right? I was like, and he's like, this is how we grew up, right? You know, you do the same thing, right? You're just not
Frankenstein it and make it happen,
right? And I love that, just like that kind of like street degree knowledge that only comes by doing. You know, you're not going to read a book on how to do that kind of shit. And it's cool to be a part of a crew of people that's kind of what gets them off.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that keeps us up at night. That stops us from eating for 3 days. That, like, you know, and it's all good in the end, no matter how depraved we look when we come out of those like incubation states of like, I just spent 3 days building something that fucking failed miserably, or it succeeded. You're still better for it, like on some level. And it's good to find like a partner or business partners who can support that sort of degree of insanity, because it really, it's necessary, you know?
No doubt. No, I mean, I remember when things would first go wrong and you'd just be like, this is the end of the world. Like, should I call somebody? I don't think I can call somebody. Should I call somebody? And then you get into the meat and the potatoes of it. And now at this point, like, literally anything could go wrong for the most part. Maybe a few exceptions on the farm. Yeah. And we could fix it. Right. And that's the beautiful thing about building it yourself too, because it's like I painfully know how this is put together. Like painfully.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But
it's so awesome, man. Oh, it's so cool. There's nothing like riding around. And this is like a Max Schaaf, who's a ex-pro skateboarder, motorcycle mechanic. But he said, you know, like there's nothing cooler than like pulling up next to a cop and being like, don't pull me over, don't pull me over. But when they do, they go, what is it? And you say a motorcycle. And they say, don't be a smart ass. And they don't know that you've had your hands in every single fucking component of this thing. Then they have no idea what it is. And that's just like people who break into the mushroom farm now. And like, we'll have a couple, we haven't had them for a while, knock on wood, but people will bust in here and think it's like a fucking weed grow. And they're like, oh, fuck. And they'll leave all the lights on and the doors open, pissed. They're like, where's the fucking weed? You know? And you're like, that's right. You came in here and had no idea what you were looking at. Like, no idea.
They were just hoping to find something to cut the meth, right?
They were, dude. I think Maine is the new North meth belt, so probably.
Yeah, right. No, I think our biggest thing before we got into the mushroom thing, we were like deep in the Burning Man world. And so we were like,
oh, yeah, you took a vacation there, right?
I mean, we ran
like
a camp.
When we were supplying blocks for you.
Yeah, no we ran a camp.
Tell me about this.
Years. So, you know, we converted 42-foot, you know, Bluebird school bus into like a flame-throwing banana split. I cut like a PT Cruiser apart, pyrotechnics, light up dance floor, like all that. And, you know, it was so much fun because it was like an engineering fest, right? And you would go out there, you'd spend like all year building these wild things, and you'd go into the most harsh climate in the world and watch most of it break and then like limp it back together. And then you'd have like 3 glory days before you had to clean up all your shit and go home. And it was like a great metaphor for the mushroom world. It's like, have these elaborate things, watch them break, fix them, and then call it a day. You know, it's just like, I'm cool with this. This is what I did for a vacation, right? So
that's a solid metaphor, right? It means you're never actually taking a fucking vacation. You're just going to Burning Man to do the same thing you've been doing.
Yeah. I've taken a breather from Burning Man. It kind of hit an exhaustive point. I was like, after a decade run, I was just like, I need to maybe like go to an all-inclusive resort or something, right? I haven't never done that, right? Sounds fun. Somebody's bring me margaritas. I can sit on the beach, get fat. Oh, lovely.
Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, there's a fine line there, man, especially when it comes down to people, because no matter how like innovative and tinker-esque like these crazy mushroom people like us are, we're also pretty reclusive and semi-hermetic in our like concentration. So when you get around people, you either go one way or another. I know I do. It just depends on my mood. If I feel like being around people, I'm stoked, you know, and if I don't, I'm like, get me the fuck out of here. I need to go work on something and not talk to anybody.
Oh, for sure. I'm a Gemini. I don't know how much credence I put in the astrology, but I definitely have those two sides where it's strong. Like, you know, I'm either full blown in it to win it, jovial, hanging out with everybody, or they're like, he's in a funk. And I'm like, it's just mainly I don't want to see you. You know?
Yeah, your face is ugly to me right now. Leave me the fuck alone. And I don't mean that mean. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I feel it, dude. I feel it. And I think it's, as you get older too and you start a business, you get to this point where if it's succeeding and you're still having to work at it, you realize the dedication comes in the day to day and you really just have to like keep your head in the game no matter what. And it's pretty easy to get sidelined and things like, groups of people or Burning Man or any of that stuff. Just, it can pull you into a world you don't want to go down. And we all know the shroomy, crazy acid freaks who took one too many fucking hits and they're never coming back. They've gone down the rabbit hole and they'll never come back to reality, and that's a part of that world too. It's overwhelming.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. I still enjoy talking to them, but they're still crazy.
It's okay to moonlight.
So what's on the horizon though?
It's okay to moonlight.
Right.
I just don't like have them for Thanksgiving every year.
Yeah, don't invite them to your mom's house,
There's a time and place.
Mom, this is you got away with it for a while. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's hard to keep those people away too. And I know there's a bunch of talk on that in CMGN, of how many people are just boisterous about it now, and they'll just walk up at a farmer's market and be like, legitimately, like, I just want Cubensis, and they fucking scream it at you, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? So there's a level of like weird.
I've what's funny is my own personal feelings about it doesn't matter, right? But I'm having this conversation with somebody. Let's just say we're having a loose conversation at the farmer's market. Person seems nice, mid-40s, whatever. We're having a great conversation. And they're like, do you have any?
I like how they're mid-40s.
Kind? I'm like, fuck you. You just went down like 3 tiers on the totem pole, maybe to the bottom. Or it's like you had that great conversation with somebody on the bus, and you've been going good, and at the very end they're like, do you have a moment to talk about Jesus Christ? And I'm like, son of a bitch, this was so good, and you just ruined it. So
they fuck it up every time, those people.
I know, that's how I feel about it. I mean, they're not the fullest low-hanging fruit. The fullest low-hanging fruit are usually like the dude with his girlfriend that are like, hey, we're the fun ones, and you're like,
right,
you're that guy.
Just like punch him right in the fucking face, and you're just like, get out of here. This is why Mark long ago kicked me out of farmers markets, because I was such a fucking dick. I swear to God, like, people just came up and asked what it was. You're like, what is this? And you're just like, why is that the first fucking question out of your mouth? It should not be like my response whatsoever, but it was, and I will just speak my mind. So I was just like, it's a strawberry. I don't know what the fuck you want me to get the fuck away from me. Mark was like, all right, you should go. It's like, yeah.
Eric's not our PR guy, right?
No. Yeah, not for fucking dumbasses who are like, playing oogly boogly with every fucking stand at a farmer's market. You're like, dude, just buy it and get the fuck out of my way. If you want to know about it, I'm happy to talk about it, but it's the dumbassery that kills me. People are just like, what is this? You're like, I don't know.
And I feel like my tolerance for it got super low when I was in the islands, because like when people go on vacation, they kind of lose their mind, right? And I think that
completely,
it's like people don't really know the right question to ask, so they just ask a dumb one. So that whole like misnomer that there's not a stupid question, there actually is tons of stupid questions, right? It's like, think about it. Like, you might need a qualifying statement somewhere in there. Like, there's a lot of elements that go into asking a good question.
It's true. Well, we've sort of lost our ability to communicate, man. It's like it disappeared through COVID entirely, I think. But for you to be able to ask a question and get a good response and have a really solid back and forth with somebody without the Jesus speak or the acid freak, you really you can judge a person instantaneously by how they use what you're saying and bring it back into the conversation. And it's a lost art, and it's getting further away if we don't really try to bring it back to how we communicate. It's weird.
No, for sure. I mean, and you think about the markets and stuff. I mean, some people are actually coming to the market because they're like starved for interaction, and we definitely have clients that like, we know that they're like we're some of the highlight of their weekend, right? And we tell them to come late if they want to chat. We're usually slammed most of our markets for the vast majority of the time, which thank God. I'm not one of those idle thumb twiddlers. We've developed really great relationships for people through that. And, people are searching for community. And for all the dumbasses out there, we've got so many great folks that are patrons that it does make it worth it. And the low-hanging fruit's great to make fun of the rest of the day, so...
That's what CMGN is for. It's
a silver lining, right?
It is, man.
Like Liz had a guy come up
in the
farmer's market booth this last year in full lace pants, no underwear. We called him Dick Doily for a while, and we're like, dude, you're getting a little too close to the mushrooms, man. Like, just back it up. Dick Doily,
by definition, for all the listeners, that is the low hanging fruit. You're like, what the fuck? People are crazy, and when you interact with the general public, you're like, is this for real right now? Am I dreaming? Like, slap me. I need to be dreaming right now. What the fuck?
Interfacing with the general public cannot be my favorite, but it does have some silver linings for sure. So.
Yeah, you get the stories, and the stories are half the battle of keeping a smile on your face through the chaos. Where are you guys going from here? You have this facility, and I'm always impressed with farms that sort of make the full move, and they get to this level of realizing that they can do the sport to store thing, because it's not easy, and it's not necessarily financially solvent right out the get-go. And I think a lot of people think that it is, and they refuse to look at it in any other realm. But I feel like once you get there, then the world opens up a bit, and you realize that your controls sort of lead you to what's next. So what's next?
For us, having increased block production, like I was saying earlier, being able to offer that more on the local level, there's enough people that are starting up, and beyond just like the home grower kit, somebody might want to take 40 to 100 blocks at a time. Nothing too crazy, I don't think, at least in the beginning.
Yeah.
But then for us, we kind of want to just like cap mushroom production at X and focus on other stuff, right? We've got about 3 acres of cultivatable land on the property. I've got goats and a donkey and some chickens, and just wanted to increase the greater homestead. Doing logging and just like forest management stuff, and once again, so I don't get burnt out on just doing mushrooms, and then also kind of trying to build in more of like a holistic approach to land management and just the things that I find fascinating, right? I feel like being a lifelong learner is of utmost importance to me. And so, dialing into the facility, there's a couple value added product stuff that we're taking this year beyond the Cottage Food Act, which we've been using predominantly for like our dried mushrooms and powders, and that kind of stuff, and having a little bit more like distribution capability, wholesale capability in that realm. And then, just like I said, just tinkering, getting our efficiencies more dialed in here, and then having maybe a small bit of time in the summer, the crazy season, to go camping or something, like something more like not mushroom related. Well, depending on the time of year, it might be mushroom related. We can get a pretty good porcini season, or we might have pretty solid burn morels this year. So we do make time to get out.
So you just slid back into it. You're like, I'm going to go camping for mushrooms, to get out of the mushrooms for mushrooms.
It's a vicious cycle, but walking around slowly looking at the ground is a little bit different than like looking at thousands of individual mushrooms that need to be cleaned up in the walk-in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I stopped mushroom hunting for a long time, and I finally have just started taking my dog out to like this spot we call the Hobbit Lands in Hollowell. It's beautiful. There's like stone bridges and just waterfalls. It's the coolest spot that really not a lot of people know about. And I've like year after year found mushrooms there almost by accident, but now I'm starting to like make it a pattern again to just go out into the woods and like just appreciate mushrooms in the wild again. Cause you really do get desensitized to like your entire surroundings when your world becomes, how do I mechanistically make a bigger or larger yield or a faster production line or whatever? You're turning into your own nature's own worst enemy, at some level. So those efficiencies are fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like to get out. I mean, if we have a good wild forage scene happening for the year, I mean, Colorado's total feast or famine, right? So,
right.
As a semi-arid state, last year, like it was like a skunk year for everybody. But the year before that, we had probably one of the biggest bolete seasons in the last decade. And like when that happens, we have pickers coming in at the end of the day, and we proof in porcini and, grade them into bins and that. So that part of it also is a bit fun. I think that was something too that was super helpful for us as a business when we were experiencing some crop failure and we were just kind of not sure what to do to supplement. And we started talking with some pickers, and now we've got a pretty widespread all across the country and a lot of folks locally that we buy from. And that was super helpful in kind of like supplementing it. And that kind of got us back into wild picking again. It's just, it's a good thing too, especially for chefs or somebody comes to the farmer's market or something like that. And they want to buy the shiitake, they want to buy your lion's mane. And they're like, do you have morels? And if you say no, you're probably stupid because, there's plenty of field buyers, there's plenty of pickers, there's plenty of people that are trying to move weight, and you just have to kind of get dialed into that network. And so you say, yes, I do have morels. And they say, okay, I'll buy all three. And that's been super
all
helpful.
3 morel mushrooms that you have. That's all. Just the 3 of them right there in the basket.
No, I mean, 2 years
0.002 pounds.
So 4,000 pounds of morels. So it was definitely like a bumper crop year here. Most of it was coming from like down in La Vida. There was a big fire down that way. Just
that's cool.
And that part too, which is nice because it keeps it away from just the growing, right? Like there's so many facets of mushrooms. I've been listening to that guy Darren's Mushroom Hour podcast, and we were just had a like tiny blurb in Search of Mycotopia. A book just came out by Doug.
Oh, I haven't read that yet. Yeah,
his name. Super cool dude. He came up to the farm when he was like, "I'm writing a book." I'm like, "Sweet, yeah," but
3 people say that a year.
He wrote it for like the Atlantic and the Guardian, I think, and stuff. So he had good credentials. And then I've been reading it recently, and it's just super fascinating. So just getting you in touch with one other sphere of the mushroom world.
No shit. I'll have to check it out.
You should check it out. Yeah, super cool dude, super easy to read book, packed full of information. He's definitely linked with the who's who in the mushroom world. And so like that forage component of it, and then just not that we've really pushed into that realm so much for the nutraceutical world, but just like knowing more about it and just things beyond just straight cultivation, because you can get that tunnel vision, and then you're like, I only know this one little bit about this mushroom world, and mushroom world's huge. So I think that was huge because I think at that time we had lost enough, maybe like we lost basically a couple 100 pounds of what we thought we were going to have for a week. And I had a buddy that was picking lobsters, and he had like 150 pounds of lobsters he was trying to move. And I was like, we're going to buy them and see how this goes. And then subsequently in Colorado, you have to have like a wild certification expert status, which we have. And we've kind of gone down that road. But that was huge for us, is just kind of a diversity of stuff and being able to buffer on bad weeks, and knowing enough people to be like, hey, how your basket's looking, right? And being able to
Yeah.
bring in that way, which is, you know, diversity, right? Just make sure you're not standing on
Well,
just
that's
one
like
leg.
helping to supply places like, yeah, and like when places like pop up near you, like Nap, like I have these conversations with farms all the time who have like impending competition, and I'm like, well, fucking work with them, man, because it's all you have. And at the end of the day, everybody's so excited to go to their first couple farmers markets with the shit that they produced. And they have some sort of like ego bending thing that happens. And then they finally say, okay, I can buy in a little bit. I can introduce wilds. I can do this. The customer wants what the customer wants at the end of the day. So like you have to feed that need and simultaneously support your living, and you can't just be like, I only sell teacups. That's all I do. Fuck it.
Right.
That's not how
What
it
about
works,
coffee
man.
mugs? Nope, just teacups. Just teacups.
Just teacups, man. You fucking put coffee in this mug, I'll kill you. I'll kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy
Terrible
to get
example.
like sustainable, egocentric high horse of, I only do it this one way and blah blah blah. And for us, I think drank some of that Kool-Aid early on. Maybe fell into that camp or would judge somebody else. And then when I think about it, I'm like,
everybody does.
This aren't necessarily like huge distributors. I mean, there's a couple contacts we buy in from distributors occasionally, but the weird network of like random pickers, right? We worked with these Czechoslovakian guys for quite a while, and just like we'd have them up for dinner and just crush beers and talk like random shit, right? Like my life is richer because of you, and my pocketbook is richer because of you. So it's a win-win, right?
Absolutely. I'll be curious to see if with all the like crazy, legalization, decriminalization of the psychedelic world, if it'll start to function in that manner, because it's sort of interesting. I think we've all, not all of us, but a fair amount of us have been in that world, and it's been a boomer slinging sort of introduction into this, because a lot of us, that's just where you came from. And then you realize you didn't want to go to jail, and you said, okay, I can cultivate other types and not worry about that fact. But I do wonder if that will change. I guess it depends on how you legalize it, how you regulate it. It's not food at that point. It gets really weird. Maybe it follows the weed trend. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm curious too. I mean, like, Denver being a hot spot, right, for the decrim thing. And then, the night it passed, right, I got like 100, 200 emails like, we want to invest in your company. And it's like, I don't think that's what happened, right? It just means you're not going to go to jail if you got your Martha Stewart tent in your fucking apartment, right? Like,
right.
You can chill out a little bit. It's not the green rush that cannabis was, but people see it as such, and they might not be super far off in the sense that, like, I think it could push to some degree of therapeutic use in the United States, but it's just such a different animal than cannabis.
It's not habitual in the same way.
There just being like random retail stores where you can buy psilocybin all over Denver. I think that's a can of worms that we don't really want to open up as a society. Now, if it was like you won't ever go to jail for possessing or distributing these things, right, on a person-to-person basis, then that's different, right? And I think it still keeps the challenge in it, right? Like if it's widely accessible, I think it can like delegitimize the experience. Not to hate on eating mushrooms at a fish show or something, but I think that set and setting is very important if you're gonna like pull something from it. And just getting hammered on your IPAs and deciding to eat a couple chocolates or something, I don't think you're finding God in a sustainable format in my mind. Not to be a judge.
Right. What's the Tom Waits line? The devil's just God when he's drunk, I also really enjoy the meme that I saw this morning that said IPA is just the white man's version of a pumpkin spice latte. I was like, okay, that's accurate. Yeah,
that's too funny. I mean,
man.
I'm definitely an IPA drinker. Unfortunately, I burned my palate out super early, and we've got enough to own or involved in breweries. It's just like everybody has kind of catered to that movement. I think because we can't taste anymore, and
you just can slug it down.
If it ain't bitter, it's just like, what the fuck is that? I mean, apparently, this is a historical phenomenon. I mean, when they were using hops to basically preserve the spoiling beer as they were rounding the Cape, the British soldiers over there like grew a liking to it, and that's kind of how it cemented itself. But I think once you're there, you might never go back. That's what it is.
Nah. It truly is, man. It's one of those things. I never dipped too far into it. I still drink, the cheapest beer I can find, but that's just me. I'm a dirtbag.
You can drink more of it. That's for sure.
It's very true. Yeah. You can blow up like a balloon, or stop drinking and whatever. Or you're fucking borderline alcoholic if you just do too many IPA nights. It's funny, man, how that can creep up on you.
Yeah. Double dry hop, 10%er. You're like you have 3 beers. You're fucking smashed. Yeah.
You're done. That's true, man. Well, speaking of smashed, I think that like brings it back on this like weird level, not to harp at all on the psychedelic thing, but it is interesting that the majority of people that I've talked to about it don't ask for fresh mushrooms anymore. They all ask for like, how do I microdose? How do I eat these things without having them have an effect on me? Which is like, why don't you just eat some lettuce, man? I don't know what the fuck what are you after? That's my opinion about it. I don't really get it, but if you're not going to go full on, what the fuck are you doing here? So it's this interesting, like, diversion from the trippy psychedelic psychonaut into the soccer mom who wants to manage her fucking anxiety with microdosing. I don't understand it quite yet.
No, I mean, I wish I had like something to offer or help with somebody. Cause we have people that come up and they're like, I'm a veteran, right? Like I have PTSD, or like I have like extreme anxiety. What can I do? And I'm like, you can go on the internet and try to figure out how to grow them yourselves, because you live in Denver, right? And you're not going to go to jail for this, right? But
just figure it out.
I mean, like we're based in Jefferson County, like none of those laws apply to us, right? We're 45 minutes from Denver, and I think more than anything, it was a good conversation starter, right? And that's really, from what I understand, a lot of people that worked on like the legal initiatives associated with it, and were the same kind of people that were working with the legal initiatives with cannabis, was it was decriminalized cannabis possession in Denver for quite some time before it went to full legalization of medical use.
And Maine has been slow as shit. Oh my God. You can just now finally buy weed at a store without a medicinal card. It's crazy. It's been like years. It's just slow,
Right. But the thing is, you made it to the finish line, right? It started with, some pioneers being like, we should not be putting people in jail for fucking smoking a joint. And then it slowly transpires into what it has become. And I'm fascinated with what psilocybe species can do for people on the like, hey, I need to quit drinking, or hey, I haven't been happy in years, and they can have these kind of, for lack of a better term, come to Jesus moments. But they, there has to be like a lot of intention associated with that, especially with people who have like, I don't want to call them damaged goods, but people that have major issues that they're trying to sort through. Those people, more than anybody, like, shouldn't just be able to like go full carte blanche with, let's heroic dose on this one,
No, you have to be in the right mindset and mind state to actually do it, and I think that's often overlooked, is the set and setting thing, like you're saying. And it's imperative, and a lot of the people pushing it now are just like, it'll solve everything. And you're like, not if you're not ready for it, or if you're not the right person, Or
do you want to hold that crazy son of a bitch's hand while he's going through this? Because somebody has to hold his hand,
Right. Yeah.
Or at least be close by, right? I have a few
Well,
friends.
it's also recognizing it can be tragic and you can get something out of that tragedy. It's like you don't just mainline DMT and be like, my life's so much better now. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I find it fascinating. When the initiative came out, we as a company did not say yay or nay in favor of it.
Right.
Because it really wasn't our fight. It didn't directly affect us anyway. Like I said, we don't live in the city and county of Denver. I find it fascinating. I think that there's a lot of untapped potential in that world. Seeing what the Johns Hopkins folks are doing with it, and we actually were working with doing a little bit of consulting for a farm up in Canada they got one of the first permits to do a fully therapeutic use cultivation site, which is totally fascinating. And we had one of their guys come down here for a couple of days, and we kind of chat through kind of systems and what they might need, because they were basically going from like a basement level cultivation to like a couple $1 million spot, right? I'm like, that's a pretty big jump, guys. But it's
that's a heavy one.
Yeah, well, but they had the backing. I think, not to be in that camp, but with enough know-how and definitely enough backing, people can pull off,
do whatever you want. That's true, man. Money does make the world go faster.
It does make the world go faster, right? And so, just interesting to watch those guys. I mean, it was completely uncharted territory. It was still kind of up in the air. And they had thrown so much money at it before they even got permits to legally do it, right? Like, they were building out the site just so that they could be at the starting line when the shot was fired. And fortunately,
That's
it worked out in their favor. They were given the permits to do it. And, it just, just totally fascinating that our neighbor country is like, we're going to explore this on a national level, right? It just seems amazing. But,
Canada has its own interesting components to like living up there. Like, I know, talking to Brad about it, he's like, I wouldn't raise a kid anywhere else, but at the same time, they're definitely like, they have their issues. They overregulate things. They have a bit of control, like on a governmental level, that you kind of don't want in there, necessarily if you're from the States. So it's always a question of like how much people can control what you're independently doing, not business wise, but just on a personal level. If you can be arrested for growing weed in Canada just for yourself, that's pretty fucked up. If on a national level, it's legal. It's a weird system they got.
Yeah, I'm not super versed. I spent most of my time in British Columbia, and living in the Northwest. And Liz's uncle, honorary uncle, might as well be blood, is up there. We would just smuggle him tobacco and alcohol because it's so damn expensive, right? We were like bootlegging across country lines. But it was like, there's so many things, with their healthcare, other things that just were so much better than us. So maybe if the grass is always greener, there's always something to learn from each other. And
it's always good to have a neighbor to like be envious of or weary of too. You're like, oh no, how's it up there? And I think like that area is it's peculiar. Like if you're going into the Northwest sort of area of Canada, it's Wild West, like going up into Alaska or into Canada, or even just down in the Pacific Northwest. It's weird, man. I think that's where Evergreen and the people who've come out of there are just bizarrely interesting people. I mean, there's people in Whitefield, like a town over, who graduated from Evergreen and know everybody out there at one time or another. So
sure. It's an incestuous circle. And the thing is, in Washington has kind of a bad rap because it's one of the lowest
without a doubt.
Yeah, it's one of the lowest cost in-state schools. There's not like a typical grading system. So it's really easy for people to be like, these fucking idiots, these slackers, these hippies, these whatever, these anarchists. The list goes on.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
the
Whatever
people
you call us, we are.
the people that I know that went to Evergreen that did well, right? That did remarkably well in that environment, that's self-driven, like you have access to all these amazing things, and you have these faculty that are going to help facilitate you to do all these amazing things. You just have to fucking do it. Those people have gone on to do the most amazing things. And, I like to us as some small part of it, but it's just, some of my peers have just continued to blow my mind of just like what they've been able to pull off. And they're able to pull it off because they don't need somebody to coddle them the way through it, right? That school really fosters independent thinking, independent learning. And and if you can work in that environment, you can pretty much do whatever that you want in this world, at least in my opinion.
It's totally true. Yeah, people put on these false perceptions of what's going to stop them. And if a school like that can break through to a number of kids continually on the conceptual level that nothing really can hold you back if you maintain your independence, you got a world of crazy ass fucking mushroom growers in 2021, man.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a few mushroom growers that have come out of there. That's for sure. And and it's funny because everybody's talking about the mycelium being interconnected, and that's always like a big thing that was pushed in this interdisciplinary world, and how the evergreen tree that was like the emblem for Evergreen State College was drawn on an Etch-a-Sketch because they wanted to show that it was all connected. Which I love.
Hippies. I love it. Fucking hippies. That's cool, man. I mean, it's good to be part of those crowds. Like I went to a small art school and it was, I think it was like 70% were like lower socioeconomical blue collar sort of class cats. And there's like a camaraderie there because you do have to survive. You're not just like paying for school, expecting to like, get handed some bitchin' job for $100K a year right out the bat. You're like, no, I just wasted a bunch of money to paint naked people for 4 years. Therefore, I better figure out the rest of my life, Yeah. But the best people are there, and you can make some friends for life that are just as driven to do the weirdest shit. And those are the ones that continue to inspire me as well. So.
Yeah, Misfits have always been my crowd. And, if I stayed in Maryland, that's where I grew up, I would have ended up dead or in jail for sure.
Of course.
And, I, found people that were like super creative and super, into reading obscure stuff. And once I found my little groove out there, it was like, what, was I thinking if I was at one point entertaining not going west? I got accepted to a bunch of colleges in and around Maryland, and it was like, this was the outlier. It's 3,600 miles away or something like that. I was like, yeah, this is the one. This is the one. And
I'm gonna get the fuck out. Yeah. So, what is your upbringing? Sort of in a I don't know. In a brief description, I guess. Did you grow up poor? Did you grow up with money? Was there any sort of push your own agenda, be independent sort of circle around you at all?
My parents were kind of metaphysi type to some degree. It's kind of a blanket statement, but we grew up close to the DC area. My parents couldn't have like buying power in and around the metropolitan area, so they moved to the country, which was definitely harsh on both my brother and I think more so on him. I was 5.5 years younger, had a little bit more acclimation time. But the town that they moved to from like a kind of metropolitan pocket of DC was known as the town of Hills, Whores, and Liquor Stores. And, if that is not a place to call home, I don't really know what is. And, I think probably went from where I grew up to being like total status quo, middle class, blue collar mix to being like relatively well to do because my dad still took the train into DC to work, and they had a couple acres and that kind of thing. But it's just the area has gotten a lot cooler. I will give it that since I've left. But it was definitely, heroin was super big, still is, but I lost a lot of friends and acquaintances, even before I left for college. There was just a lot of like sad stories, just drug abuse and alcoholism and just getting into trouble, which I got into quite a bit of it myself. And but I was always just like the kid who still went home and read a couple like random books, Terrence McKenna, Food of the Gods in sophomore year, or Dad gave me a Be Here Now book, when I was a freshman in high school, and some of these like kind of Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test and Hunter S. Thompson's Hell's Angels, and like that whole era of reading. I was doing a lot of that. And these guys were getting fucking weird, but they're smart. You guys are fucking idiots. And so I was like, this is not my crowd. Like, we might have some things in common, but don't think this is the best place for me to spend my time. And then like I said, I went out to the West Coast and definitely found a better vibe and crowd. And then, like I said, I've had some friends gone on to do great stuff where I'm from, and I'm super proud of them and proud of the effort and diligence they put into making this kind of rural community cool and bringing in arts and music and that kind of stuff. But it was definitely an uphill battle, and knowing kind of the crowd.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it was not going to be pretty.
There are those who like stay where they grew up and they flourish or they falter, and there are those who just go away and they make a difference in a different place and time. And I think it's a lot to like know your trajectory and just follow it through. That's huge, because you think of all the things that you would have never gone through if you didn't just fucking leave, and I remember leaving home for the first time and traveling as far as I did, and it changes you like entirely. And then you go back to like your hometown, you see the same people doing the same shit, and you're like, fuck, they never got out, and for some reason you're like, I guess that's okay with them. It wasn't for me.
Totally. I mean, more power to you. Everybody's life's their own one to live. But it was definitely not going to work out well for me. And, I think that just like any biological life to some degree, it strengthens by pushing its boundaries and contracting where need be. And, I even see that in the mushroom world and just watching mycelium grow. And if you're playing around with different mixtures and stuff, you can see where it's struggling on a new substrate, or it's learning how to adapt to it or whatnot, and it's a good kind of like metaphor for life, in the sense that, we can get vigor from it in the end. But I think it's important to make sure that whether it's your body and you're exercising or whatever, you gotta push it a little bit, or else, there's no greater growth. Right. And I feel like we're on this earth at the very least to learn to be better. And ideally learn to help, and what all comes from that. So
yeah, it's true, man. I mean, if mushrooms have done anything, they just remind me that I got to drink more water during the day. I'm like, those motherfuckers live in that shit.
Right. Exactly. They're well hydrated,
well hydrated. Yeah. And when they're not, they're pissed.
Right. Living in a dry state, it's just like, it'll suck it out of you. Right now we're in our moisture gathering time. Where we get, like last night I was out working on the container, and we got 2 inches in like 45 minutes, right? Just dump, right? But by mid July, it's going to be crunchy out there, right? And then just the sun, and it's like you need to drink water, or your pee is brown and your skin is going to crack and fall off.
Yeah.
Get to it, brother.
Yeah, man. I remember the first time being out in the desert, and then subsequent times, people are just like, you realize like how you make beef jerky, right? You just put something like that in an oven. Well, you're in an oven now and you're essentially human beef jerky. So drink some fucking water and wear some long sleeve shirts that are white, like do anything to try to dehydrate or don't dehydrate yourself, because it's going to happen all too fast. And when you live in those diverse climates that are like really nice and then they're like fucking hostile, you forget, and you're like, oh my God, I am beef jerky. Shit.
There's like this like zine with Burning Man, and it's called Piss Clear, and that's like its whole thing, right? Like, if you're not pissing clear at least some part of the day, you are fucking up. Like, get it together, drink. Come on.
Is that more of the scene there? Like, I've never been to Burning Man. I've heard so much about it and just refused to go because I really can't take that many people in one fucking place. But is it more supportive in that manner, or is it like a combination of the fucking complete burnouts and then the water drinkers, so to speak?
I would say it's more like kind of a Hessian culture, right? It's kind of like gnarly. Like, people are very complimentary and loving of each other, but they will still bust your balls in a heartbeat. Like, I love that it wasn't like a Grateful Dead show. Like, give me a hug. I love you. It's so great to see you. It's just like,
right.
You dropped something, asshole. Like, you're going to pick that up, right? Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's a little harsher. Oh, that's fucking great.
I love that. I love that tough love, right? And there's definitely a lot of heckling, and you'll have, like, one year we'll be next to like the electroshock therapy camp, and they've got like Asian like tiny bikinis with cattle prods just shocking people. That's their gift to the universe, right? Or like the chainsaw margarita guys we're next to 1 year, or there's just such a wide breadth of people, and they're mainly just building shit to make each other laugh, which that's my favorite part of it, right? There's like no real point.
Oh man,
humor, but it's definitely
that's the best part.
A lovely rainbow gathering kind of crowd for sure. It is definitely
that's good.
You have to have your.
That's
shit
good
together.
To know, man. Yeah. I mean, you are like going to make it out there into a town that doesn't exist before or after, So it has this like conceptual, esoteric, and very existential like basis in general. So you might as well have that, I don't know, predisposition to understanding those weird facets and being able to play with them in your head to get excited out there, which is cool. That's what I kind of thought it was, but I wasn't sure, I was like, I don't know how many times people have been like, you should come out. And I'm like, no.
I mean, you would love it being a gearhead and just like the stuff that people fabricate, the cars. I mean, we made it in Motor Trend magazine 2 years in a row for the art car we built. We split a PT Cruiser in half. That was our last one. Put in like big rear coils. Man. We got 26 people on that thing cruising down the playa.
Holy shit.
It was like taking that PT Loser and giving it a whole new life.
Fuck yeah, dude. Oh my God. Those PT Cruisers, when they first came out, they were terrifying. I was like, look at that mini hearse, man. What is happening in there? Then you try to get in one and you like sit in the back and you're like, I'm going to fucking die of claustrophobia back here. Get me the fuck out.
Well, and they've got the same engine as the Dodge Neon. So just imagine a Neon with 26 people on it, right? Like it's impressive with what you can do. But, just the scale of the art, the scale of the know-how, the scale of just like, a group of people that come out and they go, there is not a single trash can there, but there's no trash, right? There is no restaurant there. There's no place where you can buy food, but there's abundance of food to eat. And it's cool how it all works out. And it's just a temporary societal experiment. I mean, it's changed a lot over the course of the time that we've gone. I think population has more than doubled since we first started going. But, for us, it was just like a fascinating thing to kind of be involved in. And, like we'd be next to Dr. Bronner's camp and they've got these giant showers, right? And people like hosing you down from up on top and you're just in a sea of 180 people, right? And you're just like, this is weird. But I'm getting
This
clean.
is fucking weird. Oh, it's so good. Well, I know it's sort of like, it speaks to that weird coming from the East Coast world and going towards the West, like you and I think have both done. Like I was blown away when we got to San Francisco and there was like recycling. It was like paper, plastic, glass, trash, compost everywhere you went. And I was like, what the fuck have we been doing my entire life? Like on the East Coast, you don't realize that like not that far away, a few thousand miles, people operate completely different, you know. It's like a strange reality shock, you know, and then you go into these other worlds like Burning Man and it's fucking nuts that this many people can make this happen, you know?
Yeah, I mean, thank God it only lasts 10 days. I think it would fall apart at like that 3-week mark, right?
Yeah. I wonder like who figured that out.
And they're just like, well, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're slowly desiccating in the sun is what's happening. But
yeah. It's the only place on the earth you could fucking do it though.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely a funny place.
It is, my man. Well, fuck, what would you, I hate to make this like generic question, but like, what would you offer as just a fucking small bit of advice to people who are getting into this? Because there are a lot. It's crazy. And they all ask all of us for consultations or hours of our time or emails or whatever. And I can't ever nail it down to one thing that I've learned that makes the most sense, but maybe you can.
I think the biggest takeaway, and this is kind of like a motto we have around here, is just be okay with failing forward. And, you know, it's hard, right? You know, it's like you're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to think that you're doing great and then it all falls apart. But it's about perseverance, right? We're not on a sprint. We're in a marathon. And, you know, not that I've done much long distance running, but I hear that there's a runner's high that one achieves deep in the flow of the run, and I think that you can get to that in this mushroom cultivation world, or even just like any business, really. Like you've been doing it long enough. Like I remember reading Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, and one of the things that was highlighted in that was just time and dedication, right? So you might not necessarily be amazing at something, but if you're willing to just put in the time and the effort and just keep getting up and keep getting up and keep getting up, that there hits a point where you can touch the magic, right? And the magic becomes one with you, and you're like, oh, yep. You know, it's so hard for me when we do bring in staff, you know, and we're not fully staffed year round because of our seasonality, but you know, we usually have 1 to 2 people helping us for the season and kind of bringing them up to speed. But there's so many things that are like almost impossible for me to explain as far as just like the people I check in with and how it all works, because it's such an intuitive part of me and I just know how, right? I know how to make it work. Like we've got a shortage of mushrooms this week, or we've got a glut of mushrooms this week. They always find homes, or it all figures itself out. How does it? It's hard to put in a standard operating practice. I really don't know how the fuck it happens, but I know that I've been doing it enough that it does, and very little goes in the dehydrator, or nothing actually gets composted. And so, you know, I think that's what it really comes down to in my mind is just like have the stones to keep going, right? And grind hard. And
I think that's it. Just keep cruising.
Yeah, nobody likes a quitter, so
no. Second place is the first loser, motherfucker. Yeah. No, it's true. That perseverance is huge, man, and I think that statement offers up a lot to people who, you know, might think that this is like a very quick way to make cash or start a business, and it's not. It's farming. You know, it takes an incredible amount of time and dedication and sleepless nights thinking about how to make stupid things work when they don't want to work, you know, and expecting there to be only success is just asking for fucking failure. So I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely, you know, the farming world's like the only major enterprise that'll spend $1 million to make $100,000, right? And it's true. I mean, there's very few enterprises that are like, that's a good allocation of resources, But
I think we'll do that.
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's true. It's pure dumbassery, but it's beautiful. It's I always attribute it to being similar to something I'm super jealous of, and I always insult these individuals because they never look at it this way. But I've come across so many people who are in the like programming worlds. They're in the internet world. Everything they do in the app, ones and zeros, it doesn't matter. The like literally electricity goes away and all of their work has disappeared and it's gone for fucking ever if it doesn't come back, so to speak. And there's something so beautiful about that, and it's what you put into something like that really, it's just cool, and I feel like the same thing goes for how mushroom farms evolve. You just have like fucking a back 40 full of failed experiments, and you'll use portions of that shit. You better have some good storage because you're gonna tear shit apart and rebuild weird stuff into Frankenstein equipment.
Yeah, the other tip is make sure you have a hoard. Make it organized,
yes,
but make sure you have a hoard of some sort. Right. Yeah.
Totally. Make sure it's covered in a tarp, don't let it rain on that fucking pile of shit.
Ideally. But if you don't have a tarp, still have a hoard.
Fuck it. Oh my God. Well, thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. And, congratulations on the kid and where you guys are at. I'm impressed, man. Every time a farm gets to this like sort of level, I'm fucking stoked for them. So I'm stoked for you guys. And I'm excited to see what becomes of it all.
Oh yeah. Well, much appreciated. We couldn't do it without great folks like you guys. And we've learned a lot over the years through all the community, and there's definitely something to be said that before YouTube channels were omnipresent, it's nice that we were able to kind of do it by leaning on each other and asking the right questions and knowing the right people, and it feels more of a rootsy way to make it. So it's been a fun journey, and been a pleasure to be on here tonight.
Fuck yeah, man. Thanks for being on here, and we'll touch base again. And we'll talk soon, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good, bud.
This episode is dedicated to one of our first employees, young Seamus, or as the adults call him, Sean Mulkern. I got to have you on the podcast one of these days, Sean, so we can talk about the olden days of Cap and Stem. Stay sane out there on the West Coast, buddy. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. You can follow or subscribe to MycoWizards wherever you get your podcasts, and write to us, P.O. Box 897 in Gardner, Maine, because I like that snail mail. If you want to follow us on Instagram, head on over to MycoWizards Podcast or Maine Cap and Stem Mushroom Company. At Maine Cap and Stem? I don't know what it is. You'll find us. This episode was produced and sponsored by Maine Cap and Stem Mushroom Company, with music composed by Damon Hicks. Head on over to capandstem.com for certified organic substrate and spawn for all your mycological needs. And until next time, later on.